This is Duncan Fisher. You are listening to the A.C.E.S Junkyard Podcast live on 30.49 Comstar Radio.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Armored Combat Escalation Service Podcast, episode 45, your number one voted MWO and Battletech podcast on this side of the internet. Today is August 27th, 2016. I'm your host Brandon, also known as Cattra, Kell, and with me today is Hirkron. How's it going, buddy?
I'm doing well.
That's always good to hear. So I don't think there's a whole lot for HBS Battletech this week. I got my notification that my stuff will be shipping soon, so that I guess that's an update. So if people haven't checked their emails, if they haven't already received their stuff, as in I think the flight jackets are the only thing delaying, from my understanding. So
the all the physical rewards are going to be shipping out, except the flight jackets. I believe some of them are delayed, some of them are getting prepped for ship. I don't know exactly, but I do believe that most of the physical rewards for pre-ordering, backing on the Kickstarter, what have you, are shipping out relatively soon.
So again, check your emails if you backed it, just to double check if you moved. Make sure. I'm not sure if the time is up already to change your address. I hope it is still. I haven't moved, but for people that may have moved, make sure that your address is up to date so it doesn't get sent to your old place. In terms of that, let's talk about MechWarrior Online, because there's some interesting things going on right now. But first, should we talk about the patch that happened on Tuesday, or do we want to talk about?
Let's start with the patch and we'll move from there.
Sure, that sounds good. So of course there was the patch on Tuesday, and in that, what was your favorite thing in that patch? Because I know mine was a little niche thing that I don't think, well, people probably obviously picked out, but mine has to do with the battle grid. But what?
I'd have to say the prettying up of Crimson Strait. I really liked the art pass on it. Adding foliage, adding destructible terrain a little bit. I thought one of the most interesting things on it is the concrete columns of the some people refer to it as the carport, others just the platform. But if you do enough physical damage to those supports, large chunks of concrete break off and fall away, revealing just reinforcing the rebar that goes into them. And I thought that was really a nice touch to throw in there. It's not just a tree falling down and then disappearing. This is an actual battle scar on a physical object in the game. So it makes me hopeful that we'll see similar things on other elements of other maps. Maybe some of the buildings later on are going to showcase damage if they get hit enough. It was a really nice little touch, and I really enjoyed it. I don't think a lot of people are aware of it yet.
No, and it's definitely something I think that a lot of people want, because that's one of the things that when the MechWarrior 5 trailer or whatever was shown off, everyone was just astonished that. So in the trailer there was the parking garage that just got ripped to shreds, and it was the same thing. Like, it got hit, and then the rebar and all that was showing through the concrete, and it's just like, okay, now we finally have a system, I guess, that can do that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's one thing I noticed as well. I don't think a lot of people, in the heat of the moment, a lot of people probably won't notice it if you like hit it enough. But it's one of those small things that I'm with you on that. I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Just small things like that. That yes. Overall, I think the new map. For people that don't know, Crimson Straight's got a art update. It didn't get like changed at all. It just got updated for like a lot of the new stuff that they're adding, such as like destructible terrain, day night cycle, that sort of stuff.
The textures on a lot of on the map got updated. It's a lot crisper. I did see a couple bugs, mainly due to texture popping here and there, and I've got a pretty robust system, so I don't really think it's an issue on my end. I think it's an issue on PGI's end. But such things are expected. We've had a number of maps that have had to have you know small fixes here and there to you know to tweak certain features in order because they aren't performing as well as they should. Forest Colony being probably the biggest example there. They've had to go back through and I think at least 4 or 5 times now, they find a little thing on Forest Colony that just needs to be touched up because it's not loading correctly or it's not responding correctly as matches progress on it. So I fully expect any of the texture popping and delays to be fixed up eventually.
Other than that, like I said, the one thing on the battle grid, I'll just say my favorite thing here now. My favorite thing on the battle grid is that the how the enemy is facing, or I guess the leg orientation, finally shows up on the enemy maps if they're under UAV or if you have them identified.
Yeah, if you've got a good spotting
finally,
on them. Yeah.
Yes, this is something that I said that they should implement for a while. At least last podcast, and I think the podcast before that, I said this, that you can add a layer of information warfare by even if because they stripped back or at least in my opinion they stripped back the battle grid a bit when they did the update to it because you didn't get as much information from it. But you can also, like I said, if you give a reason to use LAV or a reason to hold targets or tag someone or narc them, and you can relay that information back, then perfect. You added a layer of information warfare to the game, and this is basically what they did here, or at least in my opinion, that's what they did there.
Yeah. I will say though that until they did the hot fix on the 25th, I didn't really like the fix to the mini map battle grid just because it was hard to read the sector designators. They were a little fuzzy when looking at them on the mini map, not so much the battle grid. Luckily, the hot fix kind of went through and made them easier to read. I'm playing on a 24-inch monitor, so it's I've got good resolution. I can't imagine what it would have been like trying to read them on anything less than that size. It would have been pretty hellacious. So, uh, but yeah, I forgot also one of the really interesting things on Crimson Strait that they popped in there is that some of the large trees, if you break the branches off and you look at them after you do that, you'll see a flock of winged creature buzzing around it, like a large, I hesitate to call them birds because you can't really tell if they're birds or if they're like some type of like giant fruit bat or some other creature of note. Um, but it's a nice little thing to throw in there that shows, hey, there's actually, living things on this map. There's, they're in the trees. They do get disturbed if, you disturb them. So it makes the environment feel more robust. It's a nice little touch.
As well as in the patch, of course, we get the Cyclops that was released.
Yes.
Have you had a chance to play around with it? Or?
I have not played the Cyclops. I didn't order it. I know a couple people that have. I've talked to them. I've talked to a number of people who have played it, asking their opinions. It's kind of mixed. I've had a number of people that are very satisfied playing it, that it works really well. A number of people I've talked to are a little disappointed in it, that it's not exactly what they were hoping for. Even with the unique quirk of the battle computer, they were expecting a little bit more from it. The consensus for the most part seems to be that it is a good all-round assault mech. It's a kind of, a jack of all trades, master of none kind of deal with it. It performs well in certain situations, and in others it can be outclassed. It's it's definitely decent as far as inner sphere assaults seem to go, at the 90-ton range. It's it gets beat out, in many people's minds, by the Mauler, but it's doing significantly better than the Highlander. So
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to play with all of them yet. I can say that the couple that I played through, this is my opinion. It's a very balanced mech, and that's probably why you don't see a whole lot of people talking about it. It's very much in a very good sweet spot for balance, as far as a new release mech is, because usually most mechs when they're released, as with the trend, is they're either really good or they got really janky hitboxes and they die instantly.
yeah,
But the Cyclops on its release was really, really good. And by that I mean it was balanced. And I think that's one of, I don't want to say the issue because it's a good thing that it came out balanced, but it's just, you don't hear people playing, or you don't see a lot of people playing it aside from like the first couple days, and then they revert back to what is currently like the meta.
yeah.
But the couple that I played, I had good games with them. I had bad games with them. So I can't really give an opinion per se. Aside from, I think that certain ones will be good once builds are fleshed out for them a bit more. Because there is the possibility there. The only downside is that, aside from one, I don't think they have any energy in the torsos at all. It's all in the arms, and
Yeah.
one has it in the head.
Yeah, the hero has it in the head.
So from there, from like a perspective, if you're trying to like weigh like what mech to take, like if it's between the Cyclops, and if you want to go 5 times higher to the Banshee, like the Banshee's going to win out every time just because of those torso energy slots.
Yeah, for 5 tons more, taking the Banshee is worth it.
Yeah.
If you've got
The
a Mauler, the Mauler's going to do a lot of what the Cyclops can do, and in some instances, do it a lot better. I think one of the things that really hurts the Cyclops is that it kind of didn't get quirked at all, which PGI has this tendency of, when they're testing either a new quirk pass, or in this case the energy draw system, any mechs that are released around that time tend to get the short end of the stick when it comes to quirks. So the Cyclops is kind of feeling lackluster in that department. I think, though, eventually the Cyclops will have a pass done on it, and it will help it out a little bit more, make it stand out a bit better. But as it sits right now, it really does. It's well balanced, can do a lot of different things, uh, but it doesn't really stand out that I have not heard anyone go, "Oh, I want it. I'm going to be dropping, into something. I definitely want to take my Cyclops." Other than the fact that they want to, get XP on it so they can, level it all the way up.
Yeah, pretty much. That's a pretty good summary of it right there. It's uh, it's good, but there's things that are better. that you could take for just a little bit more tonnage, I guess,
Yeah.
is what it would be. Especially if you're playing in any sort of competitive type setting.
Yeah. And even if you're, I've heard a couple people suggest, oh, well, it's a great mech, for taking into faction warfare if you're playing Inner Sphere and you're dropping, if you're on a team that, consistently drops assault mechs for one wave, that the Cyclops is great for that. I've seen a couple people play it. I would say, it's okay, but I wouldn't want more than one in a lance. Um, you know, Having three in a 12 assault mech wave is pretty much all that you need, because all that way everyone in each lance gets the benefit of the Cyclops' battle computer. But more than that, you can fill it out better with Banshee, or you could fill it out better even with the King Crab and the Atlas if you have the tonnage available to you. It's just it's there, but it needs a little bit more of something to really put it up into where I would be comfortable with it. But that said, Kodiaks are still probably the go-to assault mech if you're looking to play assaults at all in quick play. They beat out dire wolves, they beat out atlases, they beat out king crabs, and they'll definitely beat out cyclops. The Kodiaks are a beast of an assault mech, especially the 3 variant.
Well, yeah, but the Kodiaks is just a beast in general. The amount of
Yeah.
weapons and pod space that thing has available, it's insanity. It's lunacy.
Yeah.
Compared to anything else in the game at the moment. Like if you're playing a non-restricted competitive way, as in not faction warfare, but you're playing in like if you're playing like in a league or something like that, like there's no reason not to take the Kodiak.
Yeah.
I guess
For 10 tons more, the Kodiak just chews through people. It's almost sickening just how effective it is at times. Even more so than the old, Daka Wolf builds or the old PPC Gauss Direwolf builds. The Kodiak is just a monster. So, in that sense, the Cyclops doesn't stack up well against it. In fact, few mechs do stand up, well to the Kodiak. But in overall terms of play, the Cyclops is decent. It's if you spent money on it, I would say you didn't waste it. It was well spent. The Cyclops is a good mech. It just needs a little bit more loving to get into that top percentile.
And of course, in the patch, we had something that people have asked for, which is the multiple drop deck system.
Yeah.
I haven't used it personally.
I have used it. I'm a little disappointed in it, mainly because you can't once you save the drop deck and launch into faction play, once you launch in searching for a match or in a queue, you have no option to edit the deck. So if it almost it's almost forcing you to purchase the other 2 drop deck slots. If you're playing a lot of faction warfare and you're trying to have decks that are set specifically for dealing with a hot map versus a relatively cooler map, or dealing with a defensive occasion instead of an offensive occasion. The two decks aren't necessarily enough if you're min-maxing as much as possible. So having the ability to go in there and do some quick editing, especially if you're locked into a countdown and you've got 10 minutes searching for an opponent, that's plenty of time to be messing around with your deck and making changes to it. I know PGI did say in the hot patch notes that they are going to reinstitute the ability to edit drop decks, but it's going to be at least until September before they have it fully prepared. So faction play is just going to have to kind of suffer through it for right now. Though that said, that predominantly applies to invasion mode. Scout mode, it's all right in, just because it doesn't fluctuate, because scout matches tend to be a lot faster. The objectives are much smaller in scale compared to invasion. The battle is much smaller. It does the sticking to 2 drop decks if you aren't willing to shell out for the extra 2. That's just fine for scouting.
And aside from that, because we already talked about the battle grid, drop
Yep.
decks, I think that's everything.
I like the addition that they finally put in a store cart into the in-game store, so you don't have to buy things one at a time constantly. You can actually click on a number of different things, load up a cart, review your purchase, and then hit purchase afterwards. I thought that was a long time coming. I'm glad to see it finally has made it in here.
Yes. Now, if only, yeah. That is true. Just slice of life, or not slice of life, but just like quality of life changes as well that came in this patch.
Yeah. Then the only other thing that really is of note is the color coordination of the supply caches, with labeling things as common, uncommon, rare, and ultra rare. But it doesn't give you your chance of getting something like that. And supposedly, when you unlock it, it's, I guess, you have an equal chance of getting anything from that supply cache. So if you see an ultra rare, 7 days of premium time, you've got a 1 in 8 chance of getting that. But at least from a number of people that have actually used the supply caches, they've unlocked them. It doesn't feel like there's a 1 in 8 chance most of the time. It feels like it might be skewed more towards the lower level of common and uncommon having a higher chance of being redeemed rather than the rare and ultra rares.
Again, though, I'm still on the fence about supply caches in general because it just kind of, it's like, again, it still doesn't feel, I guess, worth the gambling.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess that's good for people that open them. I just, again, sell them off, and I would recommend just selling them off for the extra C-bills.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Maybe if I see something in there that's really rare, like a mech that I don't have, which are actually becoming more and more common now because I haven't purchased a number of the newest mechs that have come out. So, but yeah, it's just an extra 50,000 C-bills for me.
And of course, we have currently undergoing the PTS for the heat skill system. There's a number of things here that I can talk about.
Yeah, I've dropped into it twice now. The biggest problem I'm finding is actually getting matches in it, just because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of people playing in the PTS, which we know from previous talks with PGI on the issue of public testing is a constant issue that they have. There's just not enough people participating in these PTSs to actually guarantee a good flow of statistically relevant data on how things are working. And it's frustrating for people who actually want to participate and help because they don't feel like they can participate because they're sitting there waiting, waiting and waiting and waiting for a match, and it's just really difficult.
I agree. There has to be some sort of incentive to go on to PTSs, even if it's between certain dates and certain times. Like if you log in on the PTS at this time, we'll inject your active account with X thing. Like
Yeah.
there has to be some sort of incentive, because you're right. The population on the PTS, from my understanding, and you're not just the only one that's expressed this as well. But like it's hard. Like I think people are saying like they have a good day if they can get an 8-man together.
Yeah.
Like it's tough.
I mean, they tried to, as as you just said, it's difficult to even get an 8-man. This one, they limited it to 4-man. So it was Lance versus Lance. And even that, I had a couple times where I was waiting about 5-6 minutes for a match. It was painful. And also it seemed, because of the limiting numbers, I don't know necessarily because of the setting it to 4-man, or just because there's just not as enough people on playing. It seemed a lot of people were playing heavies and assaults rather than taking out mediums and lights. So I don't think that there's been a good all round of observation of the energy draw system on all the different weight classes. I think it's been mostly on the heavies and the assaults, because that's what people are predominantly playing on it.
I think so. But overall, let's just get your take. What do you think about the changes as far as the heat scale or the energy draw system?
I think it's a step in the right direction, but I think it's going to take a lot more work to refine before implementation. Um, the first pass of this, which was last weekend, I should say, uh, the weekend of the 20th through the 22nd, really, it was the way the system was set up at the time encouraged you to take a heavy hitting loadout, predominantly dual PPC and Gauss rifle, because you could fire the PPCs off and the Gauss rifle at the same time, because charging was taken away on the Gauss rifle, and the heat penalty from that would not be overly burdensome, mainly because the Gauss rifle has practically no heat to it when fired. So all the heat from actually firing the weapons came from the PPCs, and the spike that's supposed to come from the energy draw system pretty much only counted up to enough that is if you had fired 3 PPCs at once instead of 2 and a Gauss rifle. So the the trade-off in terms of damage to heat right there was negligible enough that it didn't matter. You could take that dual PPC and Gauss rifle and just pinpoint shot after pinpoint shot every single time. It was it was annoyingly effective. So much so that I saw mechs that that the person driving that mech would have predominantly been taking a high energy alpha build, but prior had switched over to it and we're now using solely the PPC Gauss rifle combo. Um, I also saw, even if they weren't taking the Gauss rifle, they were taking the AC5 or the UAC 5, the Ultra Auto Cannon 5. It almost hardened back to the days of jump sniping being king, but instead of being jump sniping, it was mainly just sniping in this sense. I didn't see a lot of people trying to jump and fire at the same time. It was mostly just people pop around a corner, fire off a shot, duck back behind a corner, or pop over, crest on a ridge, fire, duck back down. So the jump jets didn't seem to come into play all that much. And with the fact that with this test, that there were really not a lot of fast mediums or lights participating in some of these matches. That play kept going on for a long while because there was no elements there to make those snipers pay. If you try that in a regular match, we've got enough fast lights and fast mediums that will circle around and flank you and make you pay dearly for your hubris. That jump sniping and tactical sniping like that is not as big of a factor.
Yeah, I agree with that. That jump sniping, if you're like, the biggest concern that I hear from people is something like that, because with the energy draw system and stuff like that, and with the, I haven't had a chance to check in the second. I assume it's the same though. That ghost rifles are now snap fire like they used to be. They're no longer charge fire.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing I've heard from people is concerned that Gauss rifles and PPC is going to come back with jump snipers. And what you say is entirely true. If it was to come back now, I don't think it would be as big of an issue as 3 years ago, when it was a big issue with the Highlander and everything like that. Like the fact is that you have things like the Stormcrow now. You have things like you were saying, like fast and decent hitting light mechs that are able to come in and challenge those jump snipers.
Yeah, and then the other problem I have with it is I kind of, well, back in closed beta, I kind of wasn't on board with the mechanic to the Gauss rifle. I've since come around to it because, as evidenced with the PTS, if you take the charge mechanic away, the Gauss rifle basically replaces the AC-20 for any mech that would try to figure out, okay, do I take an AC-20 or do I take a Gauss rifle? They choose the Gauss rifle because it does almost as much damage. It fires at a longer range and a faster velocity. It's got it almost weighs as much. It takes up actually a little less critical space. It's cooler, and it's in that its heat doesn't spike like the AC-20 shot does. It's just overly a better weapon. The only real downside to it is that if you crit it, if it gets crit, it blows up. But if you're in a mech that you're carrying one in the arm, like with the king crab, that doesn't matter. So I kind of want the charge mechanic back on the Gauss rifle. I know some people are going to call heresy and blasphemy on me for that, but it just gave the Gauss rifle a unique flavor that differentiates it really from a lot of the other ballistics.
I would rather, if they were to bring the charge back, I'd rather put it on the PPCs than the Gauss rifle. And I think that would work fine. I don't know about you, but I think that would work fine for me, at least in my opinion. I think the Gauss rifle being snap fire isn't as much of an issue as like the PPCs being snap fire, because the PPCs sync up in so many different builds with things such as like the AC-5s, AC-10s, etc. That it wasn't the Gauss rifle that was doing the issues as far as the damage and stuff like that in that combination. But rather it was the PPCs in combination with other things. Like I said, AC-5 PPC is still a very, very big build. Actually, that was one of the breakout builds when the charge was added for the Gauss rifle. Is when you started seeing the PPC being added with things like the AC-5s and the AC-10s and that sort of thing. So I think if they were to bring back the charge on anything, I would think the PPCs would be the thing to add charge back to. It may not be the most popular opinion due to the fact of how popular PPCs are, but I think it would make the most sense as far as a game and a balance or not even just a balance standpoint, but just as far as a game standpoint goes. One of the things though, that was added along with the Gauss rifle change up with the reduction of the charge was the fact you can only have 2 of them on a mech now. There's a max build limit of 2. If you want to cram 3 Gauss rifles on a mech, I don't see why. I mean, I guess the Kodiak's really the only thing. Man, there's some other things you can cram 3 into. And I can understand where that could be a problem, but most of those mechs are glass cannons, and I don't think it's much of an issue as some people might think. But it's hard to say. I'd rather see it in the PTS and people try playing those mechs to see how much of an issue it would be. So, as I was saying, in combination with the Gauss rifle getting its snapshot returned, there's been a max build limit added of 2, um, where you can only equip 2 on a mech at all. Well, do you have a thought about that, Tierkron? Or it's like I said, it's something that I can understand, but I don't see why build limit should be enforced like that. If you want to slap 3 or 4 Gauss rifles on a mech, it's usually a glass cannon. Like there's only a handful. I can only think of like 3 mechs off the top of my head that can even support more than 2. Which is like the Kodiak. You can squeeze one in the Cataphract, but you're running like 1 armor. Like,
you can do it on the Direwolf, but it's iffy. It's not something you see really outside of assault mechs, more than 2 Gauss rifles. Even in the on heavy mechs that run dual Gauss rifle, they're kind of a glass cannon, as you mentioned. They're either limited in their ammo, or they're limited in their speed, or they're limited in their armor. They have to trade off somewhere to make up for that weight, and it usually isn't a good trade in certain respects, because they either get hunted down by fast mechs, which they can't outrun and they can't outfight, or they just aren't fast enough to get into the fight to really support their team on pushes. So it's I on the idea of the build limit, I don't know if I don't really like the idea of it, mainly because it still doesn't take away the issue of PPCs and pairing the PPC and the Gauss rifle together and still not having a a real penalty for firing them at the same time, and just having that be your main weaponry on the mech, and just constantly firing that, because that's basically your alpha striking with that every single time and not having a consequence for it. So it kind of defeats the purpose of throwing the energy draw system in then. Um, it's just, it needs something to 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 really go over and deal with that. I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe make the Gauss rifles have a higher energy draw to them, or make it so that make it so that if you fire off, you know, enough weaponry that you deplete the energy draw system. If you fire a ballistic at the same time, the ballistic shot's delayed because it doesn't have the energy at the time to fire the shot off in conjunction with the energy weapon. I know there's reference to that in the lore for BattleTech, that certain mechs, when they've have Alpha striked with everything they've had. It's been such an energy draw that the Gauss rifle in the situation I'm thinking of, actually there was a delay firing it because the mech just couldn't allocate the power necessary to fire everything off instantaneously. It got the laser shots off, but the Gauss rifle rounds were delayed. That said, there has to be something done, but right now I'm not entirely certain what it is, because everything I can think of really complicates the system, and it makes it that much more difficult for newer players to understand, and even players that have been around for a while, it becomes difficult for them because they've got to memorize a whole new set of rules, and if they're not detail oriented players, then they're not going to bother learning those rules, and when they get into those situations, they're just going to feel incredibly frustrated and throw their hands up and go play something else. So it's one of the issues I kind of have with this second round of the energy draw system, is that things, I don't feel like solutions were added. I just feel like complications were added. So
That's one of the feelings I got as well, is that it made things very much more complicated. I like the concept of the system. I think that, again, as you said, the implementation is going to take many instances and definitely a lot of refining to get it just right.
yeah.
One of the things I brought up previous as well, you were mentioning the PPC / whatever combo. I think that's the idea of where if I was to see the charge come back, I would like to see them on the PPCs, because again, the PPC is paired up with basically everything.
Yeah.
Because when the Gauss rifle got its charge, that's when you saw the PPC 2 AC5s come out. Like that's what the combo, that's remained the meta because the Ghost Rifle does have that charge.
Yeah. So it, except I don't know. I don't feel like PPCs are utilized often enough anyway outside of this public test to really require them to have the charge. Uh, because even with the dual peeps Gauss rifle kind of being the meta build to use in this PTS, I've still seen a lot of people utilizing pulse lasers over PPCs just because they hit. They're much more pinpoint. They're easier to use. Because they're almost instantaneous in their hitting ability, whereas the PPC actually has a velocity to it. So I don't know if that's necessarily the right move to make. I'd be interested to see it just to test the mechanic and see how plausible it is and how workable it is. But right now, I don't see any good solutions overall for the energy draw system without making it overly complex and difficult to understand for players that are not detail oriented. So
No, I can agree to that. I think, again, as the PTSs move on and on, I think they're getting slightly better. But yeah, you're right. It does make the game a lot more complex in areas where it doesn't have to be as complex, I
yeah,
guess.
I did see one suggestion put up that if you deplete the energy meter, that it should take longer in recharging, and that if after the initial alpha strike, there's basically like a secondary ghost meter that has to refill before you can alpha strike again. And if you try alpha striking before that meter refills, then only like the first 30 points of weaponry will actually go off. Everything else won't. you still get the heat penalty as if you had fired everything, which I thought was an interesting idea, but once again, it's kind of a complex thing to add in, and I don't know if a lot of players would understand it.
Uh, yeah. It's hard. I'm not sure either if people are going to 100% understand it or not. I mean, in again, as we keep bringing it back to, in concept, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But it's just until it hits that sweet spot, like I think it's just going to stroke everyone the wrong way.
Yeah. As much as people like to complain about the ghost heat system that's currently being used in comparison to this energy draw system as it stands, I have to say, keep what you've got. Um, the energy draw system isn't a good enough change to make live in the game right now. That might change, in a couple months' time when we've had a number of passes on the system and and it's been refined more. But as it stands right now, I would not be quick to implement this.
No, and that's why I hope that the PTS goes on for a long while with changes. Hopefully, like the last one, I think someone gave a good response in saying that not this the one that we have now, but the last one, all the values were too low, and this one all the
Yeah.
values were too high.
Yeah, the first pass, it was. I agreed with that statement. Thing.
But I think that's the right thing to do, because what you do is you set all your values at minimum and you see what works, and see all your values at maximum and see what works, and then you try to find in between. Like that's how balance should work. Is that you set everything down to the lowest, write what worked, write what didn't. Set all your values to the highest or like a really high number, see what worked, see what didn't, and then start working those systems to a good median. And hopefully that's what they're doing. I don't know. I'm hoping that's what they're doing, because that's again how I would imagine balance passes would work.
Yeah.
And now hopefully we should start seeing with a third PTS. Hopefully, we should start seeing some slightly better instances now that we got a Minimax.
Yeah.
So I think the last thing to talk about is the customer appreciation stuff, of course,
Yes.
this year.
As it stands right now, the only thing I'm getting is the cupcake. Just because I haven't spent any.
Yeah.
I haven't spent any money, so.
I mean, that's fair. That is ultimately fair, and hopefully, I mean, the mechs look pretty all right. I don't think there was anything really too much that stood out to me as far as like mechs. Someone mentioned trying to find it. Where is it here? The Stalker is the only one that looks interesting, on my opinion. Because both the Hellbringer and Summoners just kind of look meh. I mean, the Summoner, as much as I want to play the Summoner, and I love playing the Summoner, it's one of my favorite mechs. As much as I enjoy it, that thing does need better hardpoint. It needs as much pause as it can get.
Actually, I'll say this. Let's just run through the mechs quickly. The Blackjack BJ2. It's got 2 ER large lasers and 4 streak launchers, and those are all the weapon hardpoints for it. It's just 2 energy and 4 missile.
1 energy in each arm and 2 missile in each torso. Like it's.
Yeah, it's. I'm sorry. That's I don't think that mech's gonna do well.
PPC and streaks. Let's do it.
Yeah. The Cataphracts 3L. This one I'm actually kind of interested in because it is got mask to it. So
That is true.
it could prove to be interesting. That said, it is an XL in there with the mask, so you're going to have your your side torsos are going to be very crit heavy. So if someone you know pops you in the torso, you're really likely to lose either the mask, your LB10X, or your engine rather quickly. So I'd be very nervous with that mech. The Stalker 3FB, that's that's an interesting, long range mech. Good for support.
But it
I
does have ECM.
Yeah,
That's the thing
and
that
with
makes
that
it very
ECM, it
interesting.
makes it even more. You can with that ECM, that's kind of a great thing for it because it you finally have a mech that all those people that take their Atlas DDC out and turn it into a missile boat, they finally now have a good alternative to that actually works on that concept. Uh, but at the same time, yeah, I could easily see this mech turning into a really nasty brawler. I mean, it's got 6 energy, 2 missile hard points, and that ECM. Yeah, this thing could be a nasty, nasty brawler at the assault level. The Hellbringer, it's it's not that great. I mean, it's what 4 ER medium lasers, 2 LB10s, and an SRM6. It's basically the Hellbringer from MechWarrior 4, and that really wasn't all that great as a Hellbringer goes. Um, so really not all that exciting. The Also, you can everything that comes in these pods you can already do basically with the pods that are already in existence, so it's not all that different. uh, I really think the more interesting thing are the summoners finally get some interesting omnipods. The summoner F gets a right torso energy slot, which the biggest problem I think the summoners had is that if it's wanted to take an energy build, it's had to always take them in the arms and only in the arms. The torsos have always been either missile or one ballistic slot. So the finally getting an energy slot there is pretty interesting. Also, the fact that this summoner has both ballistic and energy hard points in its arms, very very interesting there. And then you've got the Summoner M, which has an energy slot in the left torso. So, you can easily take, the left and right torso omnipods from these two summoner builds, put them into any summoner, and you can now high mount like PPCs and be a nasty little sniper with them, or large pulse lasers and be a mid range brawler. The the omnipods on these two will make things a little bit more interesting from the summoner. As they stand stock, they don't really stick out all that much, but the potential that they have for in their omnipods do make things more interesting.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like the summoners, what you're getting with the rewards here is basically, hopefully some more variety with the summoners, which will hopefully maybe make them a little bit more playable.
Yeah. The funny thing though is the Summoner F in its stock config is uh 2 UAC 5s, 2 medium I'm sorry, 3 medium lasers and an LRM-10, which is once again the summoner from MechWarrior 4. And
Yep.
then the Summoner M is a ballistic in the left arm. I'm sorry, it's an LB-10, it's a Streak 6, a small laser, and an ERPPC, which is the build that Nikolai Malthus from the old BattleTech cartoon used to use. So
Wait, I figured that's what the M stood for.
yeah, so I find it really funny that they're bringing that in as the Summoner M and not releasing that as like the Summoner M as a hero mech, as Timon Malthus Summoner, and then putting in a war horn and releasing it with a war horn, calling for every time you destroy a mech, saying "Free Birth Scum" or something like that. It would one of his classic lines from that old cheesy '90s cartoon.
You mean something along the lines of like, "You refuse my bachal"?
Yeah, something like that. That would have been great. So I think a missed opportunity there, but oh well.
Well, I'm trying to remember now because I'm going to go on a side tangent here because for the longest time Disney owned the rights to that cartoon, but I'm pretty sure that the subsidiary that they bought has split off again. So I don't know how hard it would be to get the rights to that sort of stuff or not.
I have no idea. The that's hard to say because that cartoon, I don't think it's. I'm not sure if there is like a DVD or a Blu-ray
There is
release
not.
of it.
I think that's possible because I follow a lot of things with us as far as like the animation world goes. I follow quite a few things, and I know one of the things that animation companies do, which is very famous, is that if a cartoon flops, they'll write it off on taxes. But what that means is that if they write it off, they're not allowed to release anything from now and in the future. They're not allowed to release that thing at all. They're not allowed to make money off of it anymore. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm like 99% sure that Battletech the cartoon was not written off for tax purposes because at the time, I'm pretty sure it was pretty all right, wasn't it? Like it was like it made money. I'm pretty sure. Like it didn't lose the money. Like they didn't write it off for taxes.
I don't know. I don't know the details about it as well as
Yeah.
some.
Anyways, I think the potential is there that they could do a release of it, but that's something we would have to write. I'm pretty sure it was Saban Entertainment. I'm pretty sure that was the company that did it. I'll have to double check.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm pretty sure that we could potentially get a box set eventually if enough people email and harass enough people.
Yeah, but yeah, I kind of I would have thought that releasing the Nikolai Malthus summoner as the summoner hero would have been a a fun little thing to do, a cheeky little nod to the cartoon and to BattleTech lore and roots and everything. But oh well, missed opportunity there. We're releasing it instead as a loyalty reward.
But other than that, I don't think there was a whole much else. Um,
We did, yeah. I think that's pretty much it. We've had a little follow up from HBS, from Gamescom, but we pretty much had seen what they released at Gamescom earlier, before they went to Gamescom. So,
which looks awesome, by
yeah,
the way.
Yep.
Actually,
as we said last podcast, it's looking really good. If you want to get in on it, you still have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, it looks like it's definitely going to be worth it. I can't wait to sit down and do a playthrough and maybe even record a playthrough for the channel and whatnot, and see how that goes. And I mean, I think they said that they're going to allow, what was it? There's going to be some sort of multiplayer. I know that because we hit the maximum. Whether or not that's Solaris or whatnot. So maybe some people in Aces will get together sometime and just bash each other with mechs.
Yeah.
Should be fun.
Yep.
So other than that,
yeah, then I guess we have a couple things to look forward to for September. I mean, the Night Gear is coming. Regional champion cockpit items for the 2016 MWO tournament are going to be getting released. For faction play, unit management improvements are going to be happening, so you can track your unit membership a little bit better. You can see last login timestamps. So if you're in a very large unit and you're not sure, a lot of people are some people aren't showing up and they haven't shown up for a while, you can actually tell when they were last in game playing. Uh, we're going to have new champion variants of being released for the Jenner 2C, the Crab, the Zeus, the Orion 2C, the Hunchback 2C, the Grasshopper, the Highlander 2C, and the Panther. And that's pretty much it as it stands right now. A couple of the things that were initially slated for September are getting pushed back to October.
I mean, yeah, that's true. Just trying to think
And I
here.
was really looking
But I
forward
mean,
to that Terra Firma map being redone. So
yes, that's going to be. I hope again. I hope with the pushbacks that it is taking that extra time to make quality of life changes and
yeah,
to like increase like the quality that they're releasing stuff with. But yes, I cannot wait for Terra Therma remake or extension or whatever they're going to do with it,
yeah.
because it's that's one of those maps that I love to hate, and I hate to love.
I like playing Terra Firma for conquest matches because I think it is one of the most dynamic maps to have conquest on. You don't have good sight lines from one point to another point. You've got very long distances. You've got a lot of different terrain that, you've got peaks and valleys. You've got, some ravines here and there. You've got those lava flows. It makes it a very good map for conquest. But for assault and skirmish and domination, it's terrible. Um, really, assault is, the only time assault gets interesting on that is if one team goes into the center and the other team does an end run, and then you get some dynamic fighting after that. But uh, eh, it needs a lot of work, and I'm really interested to see what they've done to it. So far, there has been really no sneak peeks at it. So I'm very interested to see, if they tease us at all with some, secret, small teaser trailer releases of it, like they've done for some maps in the past, but they haven't done it recently. You know,
Yes. Any that's another thing as well. The use of media, I think, is something that they should re-examine again.
yeah,
Because again, even just quick little flyovers of the map, and just so people can try to like, I guess like pick out where things might be and that sort of stuff. Get them hyped a week or two before the release is
yeah,
basically get them engaged, get them hyped. Again, even if it's just like a quick flyover from 3 or 4 different angles, that's maybe like 2 minutes long total. It's still probably going to be go over very well and will get people interested.
yeah. The I will say one of the probably the greatest weaknesses PGI has is in its promotion arm. I Compared to a lot of the other free to play games out there on the net right now, I see a lot more for them than I do see for MWO. I'm quite disappointed about, the advertising that MWO gets. I really do feel that they need to revamp that in order to get the name out there, to get some recognition. Even this tournament, the 2016 MWO tournament, which is kind of supposed to herald, MWO stepping into the esports market. I don't hear or see really anything on it outside of MWO, forums or forums that relate to BattleTech or MechWarrior, and I feel like that's kind of a letdown that, you should see it on some of the general esports forums. You should see it in the Steam forums being talked about, but you don't. And And I kind of have to put the blame for that on PGI. I think that they're doing themselves a disservice by not promoting the game and some of the things that they do harder. They need to get out there. They need to, beat feet and hit the pavement, knock on doors, throw up some signs, shoot it up the flagpole, and see, make people salute. I don't know. I'm using all these euphemisms, but they got to revamp their advertising ability because it just doesn't seem to be working as it stands right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think marketing for the game needs to be revamped and re-examined. In general, it seems to be kind of, I guess, tossed to, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it seems to be tossed to Phil and Darren over at NGNG to kind of do the marketing, right? Like that's sort of what it's tossed towards, and
Yeah.
there is nothing wrong with that. But also something from the company I think would be pretty good. Like, when was the last dev sit down that they did? And I understand that they're in crunch time. Like, I do understand that they're trying to get all this stuff done. So taking probably like those probably take about an hour to sit down and do.
Yeah.
Honestly, so taking an hour out of someone's day to go sit down and do something rather than working on the game is, at least from even a like logistical sense, a very poor decision.
Well, it's
Kind of. Especially if that person's like someone doing a very technical aspect of the game, like whatnot. Like if they're like working on something that needs attention constantly.
yeah, and that's something that you adjust as you plan these out, so that you don't take a critical person away from work that they need to get done on by a set date. That's that in and of itself is scheduling and human resource management, and you just have to be smart about it. But you can do it because at the same time as pulling Tina and maybe Paul or who else away from their desks for an hour, 2 hours to do this, you're getting your name and faces out there for recognition. You're getting your product out there for recognition. You're connecting with your existing player base. You're maybe attracting new players in. So while it's not as intent, as big as redesigning the scaling on mechs or designing the latest mech or the latest camouflage pattern or the latest map, there is a core aspect there that needs to be developed. And just even if you don't do the developer logs all the time, more often, there are other things you can do. The streaming of the tournament matches, there are a number of different streaming things, sites online, and they don't seem to get utilized as much for MWO as they do for other major free to play games and other major esport games. Um, Twitch seems to be their go-to, but they could also use YouTube Gaming, the Steam, video stuff that links, directly, can link directly to the game's store page on Steam. They can utilize that, and that way anybody that might have MWO come up in the queue clicks on it to look at the store page, and there's something new and interesting for them to look at other than screenshots in an in a trailer that's been there for the better part of a year now. There's just a lot of different things that could be done and probably should be done that are not being done, and it just is hurting MWO and PGI as a whole, and it's kind of sad to see because this is a good game. Yes, it has flaws, but there's still a strong core there that can be utilized, and if you promote it right, you can work around the flaws and you can do a lot more with it. So I'm hoping that PGI, will get on the ball with that, but it's like with anything, it's going to take some time and effort, and hopefully they've got that time and effort in them.
Yeah. Well, I think that wraps up this episode, unless there's anything else that you
Nope.
can think of.
I think we're good.
Alright, so I want to just thank everyone for listening to this episode of the A.C.E.S podcast, and as always, until next time, Mech Warriors.